Hi, welcome back to Jonesy Chats Wrestling. Once again, we're here for another review of this past week's wrestling. We're going to cover WWE Raw, last week's NXT, early Takeover predictions. I'm not alone. I'm joined once again by regular co-host Josh Hayes. How are you this evening, Josh?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm back. I'm back on here because it's been a little over a week. I'm back in black, you could say.
Yeah, definitely. It's good to see you back on the show. Just going to give an early sort of shout out. We obviously, unfortunately, had some sad news today. We did hear, unfortunately, the passing of legendary Pat Patterson, obviously former creator of the Royal Rumble match, the first ever Intercontinental Champion, obviously a great legend and patriarch in WWE. Obviously, he created loads of fantastic moments and memories. Really, really sad to obviously hear that he's passing. Obviously, all our condolences to Patterson's family and friends. Have you got any sort of memories or thoughts of Pat Patterson before we get on with the show?
Well, the first thing that I thought about is the Royal Rumble is my favorite pay-per-view of the whole year. And like my birthday's in January. And so when I was growing up, my birthday present every year was I would get the Royal Rumble. My parents would buy the pay-per-view for me and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I mean, Pat Patterson is one of those guys to where I, I haven't seen that many of his matches, to be honest. I don't know how many of them were even recorded because he wrestled in the Garden back in the days when they didn't even have a camera or the tapes were deleted or something like that. Like Vince McMahon Sr., has very little to do with Pat Patterson. Vince McMahon Sr. didn't really think about his company becoming what it is now. So he would record tapes of Madison Square Garden shows and the very next month use the same tape and just tape over the last month's show. Like he had no foresight. So a lot of Pat Patterson's work never got recorded. I saw a boot camp match with him and Sergeant Slaughter in, I think it's 1981. I mean, he was a good wrestler, but what I was getting at, Pat Patterson has to be in the top 5 minds in the history of the wrestling business. In terms of, he was right there with Bruce Pritchard. He was Vince McMahon's right-hand man for the 80s, the 90s. And, yeah, I mean, so much of what we know as not just WWE, but professional wrestling were things that were created by him. And the only other thing I wanted to say about it is, I mean, did you know that he had cancer?
No, no, definitely didn't know. Obviously, what a tragic sort of illness, if that makes sense. Cancer, obviously, this year as well as everything else has gone and taken away so many people. But yeah, never knew that, and I'm just really sort of feel sorry really for him himself. Obviously, his family and stuff. Anybody that knows him personally affects him. I think clearly it's going to hit WWE quite hard. Really, it's a massive loss, even though he wasn't that involved with the product anymore.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think he's just one of them. When you look back, if we didn't have Pat Patterson, there'd be no Royal Rumble, no other great moments, and he was definitely up there. I would say he had some sort of great moments up there with people such as him, Jim Ross, Gerald Briscoe, that sort of, and also Bruce Pritchard, as you said. Was there anything else you want to add about sort of Pat Patterson before we go into Raw?
Well, yeah. Well. The thing is, too, you know, the whole stigma about the Intercontinental Championship being the working man's title. Pat Patterson's famous for being the first Intercontinental Champion, and my understanding is that he was the one backstage who pushed for that title to be looked at the way that it is. Pat viewed himself as kind of a workhorse, and he wanted that Intercontinental title to embody what he was about. But the other thing I was getting at, you know, I asked like kind of rhetorically if you knew he had cancer. I don't think anyone did. And the fact is, Pat Patterson was such an old school worker that he literally kayfabed until the day he died. Like I do, like in wrestling terms, I do believe that he was kayfabing the cancer. I doubt anyone knew until today, except for people. Vince McMahon might have known, Triple H might have known, but besides them, I guarantee you no one else, even in the WWE, had any idea. And I think Pat, just from what I know about how he was, probably wanted it that way because he's not a guy who he didn't want people to kind of look at him with sympathy, if that makes sense. And so he didn't want people to look at him like, oh, you know, Pat's dying, like he's frail, you know, all that stuff. He wanted people to just he's the kind of person who's just like, he's here, and when it's time for him to go, he's gone. And that's the way he would like to make his exit, I guess you could say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, as I said, all our thoughts are to go towards the Patterson family and anybody that knew him personally. Condolences here from Jonesy Chats Wrestling and Josh. So let's get into this Raw show then. So obviously we started the show this week. We started with a moment of bliss with Randy Orton. So we get Alexa Bliss comes out. Bliss is obviously very excited that Randy's going to be there. We get Randy come out. We get sort of them sort of trade sort of looks at each other. And obviously there's a flashback, obviously, where it was obviously last week's Raw when Fiend distracted Randy and cost him a match against AJ Styles. So obviously it starts with Bliss laughing about that she couldn't believe what he did to Orton. Bliss wondered if Orton thought about the Fiend and what he thought about him. Orton said he knew Bray for a very long time, but he doesn't know the Fiend very well. Bliss said that Fiend is one of her best friends. Orton was standing, said that they'd have a lot in common with the Fiend because he wears his pain on his exterior, while Orton's pain's suppressed deep inside, so they can blend it in. Orton said he hears voices while the Fiend also hears voices. There's that similarity. Orton said the voices that Fiend hears are actually Randy's voices. Orton says that years ago he figured out Bray Wyatt's weakness. He found that vulnerability, so he burned it to the ground. Orton said he needs the Fiend to find the Fiend's weakness, the Fiend's vulnerability, and he said to Bliss, it looks like he has it. He found the vulnerability. Bliss asked what the voices in his head are telling him. Bliss wondered what the voices are telling him lies. Bliss asked Orton who's manipulating who. Obviously, this led to basically the power going out. Obviously, the Orton entrance, and then Orton didn't pretty much seemed unfazed. We then basically get the lights out, and then the next thing you know, we obviously get sort of Alexa's in Orton's arms, and obviously the Fiend's across the ring from him even. We then get obviously Orton basically going to the Fiend. Fiend obviously basically begs for Alexa to come back. We then get sort of Orton saying, "Who's laughing now?" And then the lights go out, and we get Orton basically laughing, looking like he's having a great time. My kind of thoughts of this segment then. It was an okay segment. It's kind of entertaining. Alexa comes across almost as somebody that's vulnerable. Clearly, she's not she seems to be so enthralled with the Fiend. I really like the arrogance of Orton. Doesn't seem to have any fear of the Fiend. This is kind of the first time we've seen the Fiend have a weakness. What's your kind of thoughts before we go more into it?
I liked parts of it. There were parts of it that I don't want to say I disliked, but I would have done differently. I mean, I'll go ahead and tell you straight up. When I heard they were going to do this segment, I instantly thought, all right, Alexa Bliss is getting RKO'd.
Yeah.
And I understand, whether he picks her up and he's holding her and the Fiend has to beg to have her back, or Orton hits her with the RKO and you see the Fiend just like consoling her and stuff like that. It sends the same message across. But the point they were trying to get across, I think everybody picked up on, is that Orton picking up Alexa Bliss is like, I can do whatever I want to her, and so, yeah, I like the idea that Orton's using Alexa Bliss as a way to kind of expose the Fiend, but there are a few issues. Well, one of them, just based off your recap I was just listening to, we've kind of been arguing back and forth, and WWE's been arguing with themselves over whether Bray Wyatt and the Fiend are two different people or they're the same person. And based off that segment, with the quotes you had from it, they're talking about how the Fiend remembers what Randy Orton did to him. So that it's like the Fiend is Bray Wyatt, because they're referring to stuff that happened 3 years ago when Randy Orton burned down the Wyatt family compound or whatever. But, we saw just the week before that Alexa Bliss and Bray Wyatt are looking up at the Fiend like he's a totally different guy. One thing I did like, I've been a big fan of Alexa Bliss for a while, and this character she's been taking on for the past few months. Some people were saying, though, that's kind of a demotion because she's not wrestling as much and she's kind of been turned more into a valet. That might be true to an extent, but the visual of seeing Alexa Bliss getting a stare down with Randy Orton, like, look at the people she's getting to work with now, to where if she were just wrestling in the women's division, she would never get to do a segment like that with Randy Orton. Like, I like the fact that even though they tried to expose her as like a weakness for the Fiend, Alexa herself didn't back down at all, because I love that exchange where Randy Orton, the lights going, he says, "See what I mean?" And Alexa Bliss says, "Right, see what I mean?" Like, that's good material. And I like that. But I still think that an RKO would have been better. It was my idea. They should have gone with that.
100% with you. I was feeling very similar about the RKO. Obviously, Alexa's taken bumps from the Fiend before. I'm not obviously a portrayer of women violence against women, but I think he needed to do that. I think the thing is, clearly we've got this first time ever the Fiend has shown some sort of vulnerability. He's obviously concerned about Alexa. What I would like to also see, I would like to have seen potentially sort of when Randy had her in her arms, the lights go out again. They then go to the Titantron. They then show Alexa with this new type of character, as we said before, where she's slowly metamorphing into like a female Fiend. I think in ring, this match isn't going to be particularly great. I'm enjoying the build. I don't really like seeing the Fiend show weakness. I'm not a massive fan of that. Clearly, this is designed to get the Fiend over as a babyface now, which for me, the babyface Fiend.
Correct.
I don't think probably works too well for me. I like the whole dynamic of this. I really like the arrogance of Randy Orton. But for me, I think the next step has to be taken next week. He either has to kidnap Alexa Bliss or he has to do something. So he's going to start feeling sorry for the Fiend. I think the fact that the Fiend was begging for Alexa and he gives her back straight away, I just wasn't a fan of that. I thought he should have done something more, maybe even sort of he should have then set some sort of revenge motive, because you obviously want to see this. But I think the archive's coming. I think we'll probably get that next week. Have you got anything else to add before we move on to the next segment?
No, it's just like I agree. I said exactly what you were saying too, that like they're doing this mainly because they think that a segment where Bray Wyatt gets beat up by Randy Orton himself won't get as much sympathy.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be seen as much of a babyface turn as it is for Orton to go after, a woman. Like they're using Alexa Bliss because they think that'll more effectively establish Randy Orton as the heel and the Fiend as the babyface.
Definitely. I've got kind of probably one last thing to add. I think the only interesting dynamic I'd say for this that they didn't really cover was how Nikki Cross is. And obviously you've got Alexa now. You're portraying Alexa with a Fiend almost as a baby face, yet she's had this feud with Nikki Cross, which is also a face. So that whole dynamic seems to have been dropped this week, which I felt it's going to be interesting to see how they get these characters over. Because for me, I think the Fiend and Alexa, they're far more fun as sort of heels, I think. But then that's just a small thing. Sort of going forward into the next segment, we then had the Symphony of Destruction match. So it's Jeff Hardy versus Elias, obviously for the 100th time in recent weeks. Clearly this was a hardcore match with a guitar. It was just very spotty. There was a couple of key things though. Clearly, obviously, we got Elias get electrocuted, which was quite entertaining. It's the most electric I've seen in a match since Halloween Havoc Chamber of Horrors. I thought it was up there with that, to be fair. And then we obviously then had the spot at the end. We had Jeff Hardy go back to the Attitude Era, where he basically did like a flip, and he basically near enough like knocked his neck, basically. What's your thoughts on the match and the spot?
So I love how there's been a continuation in wrestling to where people get electrocuted, but they're totally fine afterward. I mean, Elias gets electrocuted and he continues to wrestle the match. Abdullah the Butcher, as you mentioned, gets like put in an electric chair, and then he shows up, later on, he's perfectly fine. He actually fought Cactus Jack right after that match.
That don't surprise me.
The only person who's ever had any long-term effects from getting electrocuted in wrestling is Goldust. Somehow developed Tourette's syndrome from it.
Yeah.
But the main thing I wanted to talk about this match, the infamous, I guarantee it will become infamous, is the table spot, and how I can't believe that they gave the green light to that. I can't believe that Jeff Hardy thought, let's go along with this, because the thing about it is Jeff Hardy has probably gone through 2,000 tables in his career, to the point where if he's jumping off a ladder or jumping through a table, he knows where he's going to land. So they had to set the table up in that little corner with the steps right there, and no one...
Oh, sorry, Josh, you broke up. Could you just repeat that last part, please? You just
someone who set up the match, one of the producers. Am I still breaking up?
If you start again from the last part, please. Sorry.
Who knows what's going on? We can... Okay. All right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, we're good. So someone like Jeff or one of the producers putting the match together should have seen the fact they had this table set up in this little corner and no one had any idea what was going to happen, because, dude, I saw this segment before I even watched Raw. I saw it pop up on social media. But the second you see it, it's like, this is a bad idea. There's 100 other angles you could have set that table up. That's the thing. Like, it was a completely avoidable position.
Don't get me wrong, I think it looks like a cool spot, but I definitely wincing when you look at it. I just think the risk of it. Obviously, Jeff Hardy gets the win here. This is hopefully the end of the feud, but it was a very hard hitting. And just to see that kind of spot on Raw, I felt that they should have saved this type of spot probably for a pay per view, but definitely safety should be paramount. Luckily, Jeff Hardy isn't seriously injured. We then kind of go on to the next segment. We then have Keith Lee showing him warming up backstage. Riddle walks up to him. Riddle spoke and said how amazing it would be to challenge for the WWE title. Riddle wondered if Drew could do an Austin Powers impression. Riddle kept on rambling. Lee walked off without Riddle realizing it. What was your thoughts of the Riddle spot with Keith Lee?
So we're going to talk about this throughout Raw. These I don't know if you call them promos, but these segments where Matt Riddle is acting like a stoner. And, he's coming up with these really random ideas and these thoughts and stuff like that. And as we were talking about before we went on the air, this Matt Riddle character is being kind of panned by a lot of wrestling critics. And I'm going to continue to say it as we talk about each segment. I know Matt Riddle, and he's not playing a character. Like, everything you see about him on TV, the lines might be scripted, but in terms of the demeanor and the types of things he's saying, that is 100% his real personality. if you meet Matt Riddle at 4 a.m, oh, what's up, bro? Like, that's really who he is. And people who don't know him personally, I don't know if Dave Meltzer's ever met Matt Riddle. I don't know if they understand that, but it is genuine. It's not some crazy character they've come up with. They are just letting him be himself.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously Matt Riddle this week, unfortunately, he's obviously got a lot of negative criticism like online for various people, but we will go into the various segments of this. But definitely, for anybody who doesn't know, Josh obviously did work with Matt Riddle at the former big league wrestling. They've worked together quite a bit, but interesting to hear your thoughts on it, definitely. We then move on. We then had Mustafa Ali in Retribution for a promo. Ali said that everything that's happened to Ricochet has already happened to every member of Retribution. Just like him, they're discarded and disrespected. Slapjack got a rare promo, and he said it before he met Ali in Retribution, he was discarded. Ali saw him as a weapon for Retribution. Ali said tonight Slapjack will show Ricochet the consequences of not joining Retribution, and maybe Ricochet will see what Ali sees. What was your thoughts of this promo and the rare promo from Slapjack?
So, the show that no one watches, but I actually do, Main Event had this really random Miz TV on there this past week. And the guests were Retribution, and actually every member of Retribution got a promo, as crazy as that sounds. And so, yeah, I heard a little bit of Slapjack then. We heard from T-Bar Mace, but yeah, I guess, because they usually use Main Event as kind of a testing ground to see what could work on Raw. And I guess someone was impressed with Slapjack's speaking ability and decided to give him a promo on Raw. I thought this promo itself was fine. I'm saying this knowing what happened with the match and what happened with Reckoning and Retribution and the rest of the show. That's the issue. It was a good setup, but a good setup demands a good payoff.
Yeah, definitely. Going in terms of the promo, I thought the promo was okay. It gave Slapjack, as you said, a rare slot to speak. It was okay. Obviously, when you look at it, though, Slapjack was obviously previously Shane Thorne, so obviously didn't do anything. When you look at the other people in Retribution, you've got obviously Dominik Dijakovic, Mia Yim as well. That, to be fair, they weren't really jobbing in NXT, so it doesn't really make sense. I get the characters were like that, but it felt like a throwaway. Clearly, we didn't have Retribution much on last week's show, so I kind of get that they're back. But clearly, this was just done to set up this whole Slapjack Ricochet match. So obviously, they had this match. It was okay. A few good parts that sort of were entertaining. Probably the highlight for me was obviously the shooting star press that happened, obviously, where Ricochet nearly hit it. We got, obviously, Dana Brooke come out and attack Reckoning, which was clever. That was obviously a follow-up from a couple of weeks ago where she was taken out of Survivor Series. We then get sort of Dana Brooke slap Ali as well. Obviously, the whole point of it really was the finish. Really, we basically got Ricochet come back in. He then basically goes after Ali, and then Slapjack basically gets his finisher from nothing. A couple of points I didn't like. I really didn't like the whole thing with Ricochet taking out Mace and T-Bar like nothing that made him look like really stupid. But clearly we got Slapjack get the windfall here. And it's almost like, obviously, you're getting Retribution, get this windfall here. Obviously, it's okay. Ricochet's obviously fallen that far down the card. It doesn't really matter. Slapjack picking a win here doesn't do kind of anything for me. What were your thoughts on the match and sort of the chaos that sort of happened during the match and stuff?
I agree with a lot of what you just said because, yeah, I mean, Ricochet, probably one of the top 3 best athletes, not just in WWE, but in wrestling in general. But, yeah, the way that he's been used the past year, pretty much ever since the Brock Lesnar match in Saudi Arabia, a win over Ricochet, what does that mean?
Definitely. Are you still there, Josh?
Lose you.
Hello, Josh. Are you still there?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, can I just get you to just say that again? Sorry, we are having some technical issues that are not Retribution calls today. So if you could just say that part again for me, please, mate. Hello, Josh? Hello, Josh? Hi, Josh?
Yo.
You're back now.
All right.
Sorry, I don't know what... We're obviously having some technical issues again. If I could just get you to come back again and just say the last part.
Wait, I can't see you. Can you see me?
No, you've gone.
Oh, shoot. All right, hold on.
Oh, there you are. You're back now. You're back.
Hey, there we go.
Technology.
All right, let's take it from the top. All right, so Yeah, the main thing that bothered me was what you said, that Ricochet just easily took out everyone else from Retribution, including T-Bar and Mace, who are the last two guys from Retribution that anyone should be taking out, you know, logistically. Yeah, I mean, like Retribution, I mean, Slapjack got the win, but Retribution as a group does not look very threatening from this match. That's the issue.
I think the thing I have with it as well is even if they did get sort of Ricochet in Retribution, what does it add? It doesn't add anything. It's not like you're adding a Braun Strowman or somebody of that level that are going to elevate the group. It's just going to be somebody else really that has got destroyed by the Hurt Business. What's happened with Ricochet is gone from being destroyed by the Hurt Business to being destroyed by Retribution now. And I think the trouble with it, Retribution's a stable. It's not just one person. So what I think they need to do, they need to sort of give Ricochet some sort of babyface counterpart to help him in this feud. Like, if not, it just seems to be filler TV. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would agree that it's. I mean, I think we had another. I can't remember what it was. We had another thing where the guys were trying to beat someone up to make them join them, which is just a very strange concept to me.
Yeah, definitely. It's an interesting concept.
Just,
Obviously, yeah. I think the trouble, obviously, I've got with sort of the whole Retribution stuff. Most of their work has been done offline, like Twitter and stuff, and it's just so sort of inconsistent. Like one week they're on TV, next week they're not. And I feel really sorry for the group. I say this every week. I think they're all talented, but the way they've been booked is probably one of the worst stables I've seen in wrestling in a while, sadly.
yeah, I know. That's the thing, is it's inconsistent. They get wins that don't mean anything, and then when they're in matches that do mean something, like I thought, we'll talk about it later, I thought Reckoning's match was a great opportunity to get her established, and I guess we'll just stay tuned to see how that went.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's go into the next segment. So we then had Miz TV with Sheamus. This segment was designed, obviously, to hype up the main event later in the night. There was a lot of sort of Miz hyping up that Sheamus should turn on Drew, which was quite good. There was a lot of teasing. It was an okay segment. You're just doing something to build up main event. It went on a bit. They kind of did a good job of teasing that Sheamus may turn, and I think they did a great job of getting all three members sort of on TV ready for the main event. What was your thought of this segment?
So I want to talk about this Sheamus turn, because there's a history in WWE to where usually when they have an actual turn, they want it to come from out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So the fact that WWE is putting this idea out on their program makes me kind of wonder if it's not going to happen, because that's sort of that they love to kind of do a double swerve to where they put the idea out that they know people have been speculating it about online, so they can just pull it back and say, "Oh, we gotcha." So I don't know. Like I'm now wondering if they're actually going to turn Sheamus. It's I used the Daniel Bryan Roman Reigns analogy from a few years ago when they had Eric Rowan wind up being Roman Reigns' attacker. They did that on purpose, because their plan was originally to have Daniel Bryan be the attacker. And I think they're doing this. I think they're putting the Sheamus turn stuff out there on their show to deliberately flip it around and not have Sheamus actually turn on McIntyre.
It's an interesting concept.
That's my fear.
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think that if they were going to turn Sheamus, I would have thought they would have done it sort of a Survivor Series. That was ample opportunity, but they're definitely delaying it. I think the only thing with it is I'm not a massive fan of the whole babyface heel dynamic of them being friendly. I think it really sort of doesn't really sort of work for me. I think you've got Sheamus here. He's stuck in this gimmick where he's a heel certain times, then he's babyface next, which it's just interesting. But as with you, I'm interested in the end game, what the payoff's going to be here. But clearly they're doing a great job of getting him on TV. They're making him relevant as well, which is Sheamus for me is a great athlete. He's got great talent to a certain point. He could be up the card, and this is a good idea. But they're teasing this turn for a long time. The payoff for me will have to be soon, because they can't do this for months and months and months without it meaning anything, if that makes sense.
Correct. By the way, you talked about how you didn't like the face heel dynamic between McIntyre and Sheamus. Well, hey, I got some great news for you about the main event, then.
Yeah, cool.
If you want Sheamus as a baby face, you're going to get it.
Yeah, no, let's get to it then. Okay, so let's go up then. So we then obviously go to we had a sort of a flashback from last week where we had basically Raw's women's champions Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler lose to Asuka and Lana. We then had another rematch this week. Asuka and Lana basically got the pinfall over the women's champions. Lana got the windfall by fluke. She went in there, picked up the pieces. So the Lana push is continuing. For me, this match was really, really poor. It's a shame to see Asuka in this spot. I'm not a massive fan of this. Clearly, we're going to have this match again at TLC, which will be the third time. For me, this pushing Lana, I get the underdog story, but as I said to you before we came on the show, for me, Lana's a bit like a Daniel Bryan. Everyone wants to get behind her. You do feel sorry for her. It's a feel-good factor. It's a bullying factor, but then she hasn't got the ability like Daniel Bryan to back it up. So for me, I think it's a shame really to see the women's champion in this spot. Really, I think it's a waste of her time. Really. But what was your thoughts of the match and the women's tag team champions losing again?
So I want to talk about this whole Lana Asuka thing. So are you familiar with the Mandela effect?
I'm not. Please clarify.
Have you ever heard? So I'll tell you really quickly what it is.
Yeah.
So it's basically when you remember something happening that didn't actually happen. It comes from the fact that a few years ago when Nelson Mandela died, tons of people came out on social media saying they remembered him dying in the 80s. Like they thought he was already dead. And people actually remember seeing his funeral on TV in the 80s and stuff like that. And so the Mandela effect's come to be known for something that you can vividly remember happening, even though it actually didn't. And yeah, I'm having a Mandela effect with this Lana title shot because I can vividly remember the graphic showing Lana getting a women's title shot against Asuka, but there's been no talk of it. So have they even said that, or am I just creating this in my mind?
She had a match, didn't she, after Survivor Series? She got that one shot, which is by fluke. It was only because of Asuka challenged her for some reason. Obviously, Lana won at Survivor Series by, I don't know how, by not even getting involved in Solo. Then the next week on Raw, Asuka challenged her to a match in some capacity. And then obviously, then she lost that match, basically. And then that's kind of it, really.
Oh, I don't remember her losing. I don't remember.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure
okay.
they had that match, and then it's led to this tag team kind of match, if that makes sense. So, yeah, so what happened last week was she had the one-on-one match with Oscar Lana. That then led to this tag team match where they beat the tag team champions. And then this week is the follow-on, basically. That's kind of how it's followed on, basically.
See, okay, all I remembered was the two tag matches. So what I was going to say, though, we talked about how they want to kind of have Lana as this top baby face.
Yep.
But the issue is if the women's champion is happily tagging with one of her contenders, it makes it very clear that Asuka doesn't see Lana as a threat. And so I mean, just the way that it makes Asuka almost look kind of condescending, the way that she was the one that kicked Shayna Baszler in the head this week, and then she invited Lana over to get the pin. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm doing all the work, but you're here just for the fanfare. So if you want the victory, then you go take it. Like I'm not really sure what they're doing with Lana because they're not making her look. I mean, she won a Survivor Series match by not even getting in the ring. She got a pinfall on a person that she didn't even hit a finishing move on this week. So what are they doing with Lana?
It's almost like the prom queen, isn't it? It's almost like the person that gets asked to the dance, every time she wrestles almost. It's almost like they shouldn't do it. But as I said, I'm interested to see what the reaction will be when they get fans back to see how they are to her. But I think the only thing that lets her down will be the wrestling ability itself, at least with a Daniel Bryan. He was fantastic in the ring. He could back it up, which for me, I don't know where the end game is with this. I think obviously we're going to have another match at TLC, it looks like, as well, which I'd be interested to see how they pull that one off, basically. But for me, I'm not really too sure. I think this is just a filler feud. It's a shame, really, that they haven't built up sort of fellow tag teams. I'd much rather see sort of Nia Jax and Shayna facing the whole sort of Peyton Royce tandem that they started building at Survivor Series, if that makes sense, which was Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans. Even though they're heels, I think it would be far more better, really. But there we go. It's just filler TV yet again. It's rematches, which I'm not a massive fan of, really.
Yeah, I agree.
We then went into sort of there was a segment obviously with the New Day and the Hurt Business, obviously sort of trading insults as always. With this then led to a match where we had Cedric Alexander facing Xavier Woods. This is obviously all designed to basically go towards another tag team match for the tag team titles. This was actually a really good match. They only really got 6 minutes, but the 6 minutes they had, I really kind of enjoyed it. I really like the whole way that Cedric got the win here. It's a big win for Cedric, and I think really starting to think he's doing a great job with that lumbar check finisher. I think it looks really good. What's your thoughts?
I when they put the match on, I was like, Hurt Business kind of need this win. Cedric Alexander needs this win, but I didn't know if they would actually do it or if they did it, there would be a lot of interference. It wasn't really a clean finish. But Cedric Alexander beat Xavier Woods clean. That's the thing. They did. I watched it back, actually. I was like, how clean was this win? There was one little spot toward the very end as Xavier Woods is getting back in the ring. He turns toward MVP and Shelton Benjamin just for a second and then gets back in the ring, almost like that was his momentary distraction. But no, I mean, there were no rules broken. There was no interference in any way. And so, yeah, it's a clean win, and Cedric Alexander needed it.
Definitely. I think this is setting up a tag match at TLC, which is clever. I think I'm looking forward to seeing this match again. I know we've seen it a lot recently, but I think this is now time to give the Hurt Business the tag team titles. I think you have to do that. I think if they go into TLC and they don't win the belt at TLC, I think, I'm not saying they won't recover, but I think it'll be a massive waste of this whole recent win, if that makes sense. Giving them the win on Raw, I think you need to follow up by giving them the tag team belt at TLC. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wanted to see New Day versus Street Profits, but now that Survivor Series has come and gone, if they want to put the titles on the Hurt Business, be my guest. I do think that if they have long-term plans for the Hurt Business as a stable, it would be crucial to have someone else win a championship besides just having Bobby Lashley be the U.S. champ. And so, yeah, the logical step is to have Shelton Benjamin, Cedric Alexander take the tag titles. I mean, then they've got, besides the main championship, they've got all the rest of the gold in the company. I mean, hell, you could even have MVP, he's been calling R-Truth a clown.
Yep.
You could have MVP take the 24/7 title and have, every guy in the stable has a championship.
Definitely. We then go into sort of the next segment. So we had obviously AJ Styles and Almas backstage. Riddle walked up to the skipper and Styles told him to be serious. Riddle said apparently a rabbit's named Skipper. This was obviously another comedy segment for Riddle and AJ Styles, clearly building up the triple threat match that's going to happen, the sudden death triple threat match where the winner would get a number one contendership. What was your kind of thoughts of this Riddle segment?
Again, it's what I was saying about the segment with Keith Lee. All of that is Matt Riddle, but the almost part is kind of what gets me. They're trying to make him this quirky kind of gentle giant guy or something like that.
It's Kurgan when he was dancing in the in sort of the human oddities, isn't it? With the ICP, it's that sort of I'm getting that sort of vibe. Really, sorry, Karen.
That is a great analogy. Yeah. And that's the thing, we were talking about how almost kind of has a Bobby Lashley complex to where the minute he opens his mouth, he loses half of his intimidation. And the thing about it is AJ can do all the talking.
Yeah.
All he needs to do is stand there. I mean, like I also mentioned Jake Hager as another choice. Jake Hager is paired with Chris Jericho, one of the best talkers in the business. He doesn't need to say a word. He stands there. He looks fantastic. And it's the same with Almost and AJ Styles. Let AJ be the talker. AJ is just as good on the mic as he is in the ring. Almost is there, as we're going to see later on, Almost is there so when AJ Styles confronts a much taller opponent, it levels out that playing field.
Yeah, definitely. We're then going to go into kind of this match, and this was the sudden death triple threat match. Give you your credit, Josh. You said it off sort of before you went on the show, sort of early in the week. You said, "Oh, it'll be AJ Styles that wins." AJ Styles is now your number one contender. I felt this was a really good match. I think obviously it's great to see AJ Styles go against Drew McIntyre. It's something new. Obviously, Riddle was the one that took the pinfall here. I thought all three wrestlers were credible in this match. I really kind of enjoyed it. I'm interested to see how this sort of moves forward with Drew and Styles, and I'm interested to see what they do next. What was your thoughts on the match? Well done on the prediction.
Yeah, man, going right back to what I just said, to quote Arn Anderson, not to toot my own horn, but toot, baby, because over a month ago when they brought in Almost, I said, I think the intent of this is they're going to have AJ Styles in the WWE title picture, and they were only concerned about the visual of AJ staring at Drew McIntyre and the fact that AJ Styles is the same size as me. If you want to kind of cancel out that size difference, put a really tall guy with AJ that he can kind of hide behind and stuff like that. And I mean, we're going to see it later on in the main event too. They were tremendous with this duo of AJ and Almost, the way that AJ happily plays the cowardly heel. That's something that's very hard to find. A lot of wrestlers are concerned about having a tough guy image. I think that Chris Candido is one of the very few guys in wrestling who would willingly play a heel, who would run and hide from his opponents. And AJ Styles is one of those guys to where I guess because he has the resume that he does at this point in his career, he's not concerned about maintaining that tough guy image. So he will happily play this coward who uses and hides behind his bodyguard as much as he needs to. And I'm actually really looking forward to it. I think for the rest of the show, we're going to see more of these segments that kind of develop this official feud between AJ and Drew McIntyre.
Definitely. I think the thing with it, I think it's a great choice. I think the fact it's a new match, Drew versus AJ, something we've never seen before. I think AJ Styles is definitely talented. I think it gives Almas a platform to get over as well, which is clever. And I think it definitely gives Drew something to do. I think what credit to WWE, really, if you look at the supposed backstage rumours and the dirt sheets and stuff, apparently the original plan for this whole match at TLC was going to be Braun. Braun got injured at Survivor Series, and they've moved quick to get AJ in there. And AJ is the one for me. I think it's someone different. I think this gives Drew a nice match to sort of fill time until the Royal Rumble, really. But definitely a fan of this. Interested to see them feud. I think it's going to be good. We then kind of go into sort of our next kind of segment. We then obviously had the Miz and Morrison interview backstage. There was obviously a replay earlier from Miz TV where we got Miz and Morrison attack Sheamus. We then obviously had Drew sort of and Sheamus basically have brief words. It was a nothing segment for me. Did you want to cover that segment, or did you want to go on with the show?
Well, wait, was that the segment where AJ stepped in, talked to Miz and Morrison too? Because that is a very important segment.
Yeah, let's cover that one.
Okay,
let's do that. So, then.
Yeah, and we see this later on too. A few weeks ago, when Randy Orton was still the WWE champion, and Miz was Mr. Money in the Bank, I talked a little bit about how McIntyre was stopping the Miz from cashing in, and how I said, if McIntyre were smart, he would actually let Miz cash in because McIntyre's proven that he can easily beat the Miz. But because Drew McIntyre is this honorable, respectable babyface, he can't do something like that. AJ Styles, as we were just talking about being a coward, he can. I love the dynamic that AJ Styles is openly saying, yeah, Miz, like, I want you to cash in and become the champ because you're going to be way easier for me to beat. I like this trio of Miz, Morrison, and AJ. They have a common goal right now to make AJ the champion, to make the Miz the champion. And AJ's open about the fact that he only wants to do it so he can cash in. So he can beat the Miz after he cashes in. I think it's very entertaining, and there's a lot of good material there.
Yeah, no, definitely interesting to hear your sort of thoughts on that. I think they're clearly pushing AJ Styles a lot on this show, which I thought was interesting. We're then going to go up to sort of one of the talking points of the night. I'd agree, arguably as well. We then get the rematch, or sort of the match that was built a couple of weeks ago. We then get Dana Brooke versus Reckoning. Obviously, Reckoning's first match. Obviously on WTV, the main roster TV, we get her sort of there, if that makes sense. She clearly does a promo, and it's a pre-tape promo, and it says that Dana's a problem, so she'll see a Reckoning. So we get this match. Obviously, we're getting Dana Brooke and Reckoning. Obviously, the worst thing about this match is it only went about a minute, and then we get Dana Brooke get the pinfall. Let's go over this. There's 2 or 3 things that are wrong here. So the mask falls off of Reckoning during the match. The commentators have to pretend they don't know it's Mia Yim, which was just comedic. We then get sort of this shock win for Dana Brooke. That Dana Brooke obviously has lost to everybody on main event, continue it again and again, beats Reckoning. We then also get the sort of just the whole follow up. We then get at the end of it, Ali yelling at Reckoning, there's no such thing as failure in Retribution, when Retribution have got a worse loss record than Job Squad. I just felt it was, what are they doing with the stable? Obviously, they're giving them wins early in the night. This is Reckoning's debut, yet you're having a loser, which is just totally stupid, really. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, man, a lot of thoughts on it. So, yeah, first of all, I'm not sure if the mask fell off or if it broke. I'm going to assume that part of it broke, because I'm shocked that there wasn't any effort made to do a quick cutaway and have the ref get the mask back on her and stuff like that. But yeah, obviously it wasn't supposed to happen, and the announcers have to pretend like they don't know who Mia Yim is. But the bigger story here is that, yeah, they've built up Mia Yim, or Reckoning, as someone who wants to challenge Asuka for the title. And we mentioned how Asuka needs some new challengers. Yeah. She's been beating up Mandy Rose and Dana Brooke and everything backstage. And so she's been, getting some momentum. And Dana Brooke just absolutely kills all of her momentum. Nothing against Dana Brooke. I'm saying WWE Creative uses Dana Brooke to kill any momentum that Reckoning had. And obviously, Ali out there too, it hurts Retribution as a group. And I don't understand. Reckoning will have a hard time recovering from this,
Yeah, the only thing I could say that may be logical about this, if this is going to lead to Reckoning leaving Retribution like sort of retaliation with Mercedes Martinez, if that's the payoff down the line, fine. But I think the whole thing, when you've got sort of Ali all of a sudden barking orders about losing matches when he's never done it before, it just doesn't make sense. I felt it was a really stupid segment. It did him no credit. And I think the fact is, when you're going on about consequences for loss, you've never paid that off. It's another thing, another hole in the storyline, which doesn't really work for me. I think the thing that's interesting about it is we did have a similar character before do this. When there was the original Acolytes, the APA, they were originally with Don Callis as the Jackal, and he used to bark orders at them for losing. It reminds me of that a bit. It's very old school type gimmick. What's your thoughts on this new type of gimmick for Ali? And do you think it's going to work, or do you think next week they'll be back to not following up when Retribution will no doubt lose again, probably?
Well, I got to tell you, you've got me intrigued now because there are some, not very many, but there are some like comparisons between the Truth Commission and Retribution in a way. No, but yeah, they just, I don't think they have any idea what they want to do with Retribution. I think that there's people backstage who are saying that this group sucks, let's bury them and get rid of them. And there's another group of people backstage saying, no, like there's some potential here, let's build these guys up. And what we're seeing as the viewer is that conflict backstage where we get both of that. We get them built up, then buried. Then we get them buried, then built back up again. And so the only thing consistent about it is inconsistency.
Yeah, no, definitely. Let's hope moving things forward that me and him does sort it out soon. But no, definitely a shock. Hopefully the end game is worthwhile. But definitely going on to kind of one of the later segments. We then go into a segment where Matt Riddle's shown grabbing his neck while sitting down. MVP walked up and wondered what happened. Riddle said losing sucks, but at least he has an opportunity, unlike Bobby Lashley. Riddle suggested business ideas. MVP asked if he wants to pitch. Riddle said he doesn't like baseball. Riddle then suggested a Lawn Brothers business to take care of weeds. Riddle also suggested Bronuts instead of donuts. MVP said Riddle was dumb and ridiculous. He's glad he lost. Bobby Lashley then showed up for a cheap attack, and Lashley attacked him with a hurt lock submission. Clearly, for me, this is leading to an Intercontinental title match at TLC. Interested to see these two face. Really enjoyed the whole dynamic. I think MVP and sort of MVP and Matt Riddle just entertaining. Obviously, you've got a lot of stories about this. For anybody who don't know, clearly you worked with them a lot on Big League Wrestling. So talk me about the segment and what you thought.
Yeah, man. I know both of those guys. I mentioned earlier how I know Matt Riddle. Another guy who was our world champion in Big League Wrestling for about a year was MVP. I mean, guys that I've spent a lot of time with, and it is always cool to see, you know, people that I've known in the past. Because actually, they did like an NXT versus NXT UK like battle royal one time, and Matt Riddle was in there with Dave Mastiff from NXT UK, who also worked with us. It's always cool to see these BLW reunions, and yeah, it's nice seeing them work together. I mean, they Matt Riddle and MVP outside the ring, outside kayfabe, they bond pretty well. And I know that MVP likes doing segments like this. He because MVP is very good at playing the straight man when he's with a funny man. I mean, his facial expressions alone, like it works, and his whole you just being a clown, you relax, like that sort of thing. It's good. It's good. And yeah, I think that Matt Riddle, you know, he didn't win the triple threat match, but they want to keep Matt Riddle strong. Because I refuse to believe any of these claims that WWE is going to bury Matt Riddle. That's ridiculous, and it's not what they're doing. Yeah, they're going to keep him in the title picture with the U.S. title, and I think that that's good. I mean, it's good for Bobby Lashley, too. Matt Riddle can give Bobby Lashley something good to work with, because there's been some issues where Lashley hasn't had any challengers who seem actually credible to him. Matt Riddle, as Alberto El Patron said one time, Matt Riddle is a real fighter and is a good guy to get in there. I mean, Bobby Lashley has a little bit of an MMA background, too, so I'm looking forward to see what they can do in the ring.
It's interesting. Do you believe the rumours that have gone around this week that WWE will, if Riddle continues to get kind of no response, that WWE will look to turn him heel? Do you think he can work as a heel? Do you think this gimmick will work as a heel? Because there is real talk this week on sort of the dirt sheets and stuff that the eventual aim for Riddle probably will be to lose to Lashley. Then they are probably going to turn him heel because of obviously this comedic stuff isn't really connecting.
I think that there's been a lot of comparisons drawn between Matt Riddle and Rob Van Dam, and I think that Matt Riddle could have the same issues with being taken seriously as a heel that Rob Van Dam had, to where, I mean, because a heel has to be a little intense, a heel has to be aggressive, and even though we see intensity and aggression from Matt Riddle in his matches, I'm talking about in promos, I'm talking about the demeanor in general. How do you take a laid back character and make him be, you know, menacing, I guess you could say? There's some challenges with it.
Yeah, definitely. Sort of going on to kind of one of the last segments, and we then had Drew McIntyre come out for an interview. It was basically done just to kind of hype up, really, that there's going to be this match with AJ Styles and obviously the main event. What was your kind of thoughts of the Drew McIntyre interview before the main event, before we go into the main event itself?
Again, it's the thing about Sheamus. Oh no, that wasn't done in the interview. So actually, we were talking about this before we went on the air.
Yeah,
The Roman Reigns thing. That's the most interesting part of that McIntyre interview to me. The fact that he said that Roman won the battle, but McIntyre is going to win the war makes me kind of wonder if they're planning on these guys working together again. I didn't expect that. I thought Survivor Series was kind of a one and done, but I don't know. I'm not sure where they're going with it, to be honest.
definitely. I think it's interesting if they did do that again. For me, that'll be a WrestleMania worthy match. We've done it once, but I don't know how that's going to happen unless Drew wins the Rumble. Unless Drew somehow loses the belt at TLC, then wins the Rumble, then can challenge Roman and challenge whoever he wants. That's the only way I can see that kind of happening. But no, definitely, maybe it was just a throwaway of a line. But clearly, obviously, Drew and AJ Styles is going to be the world title match. That's going to be interesting. We've obviously got the Miz in the background with the Money in the Bank briefcase as well. We then went into kind of the main event. So we obviously had Drew McIntyre and Sheamus versus Miz and Morrison. It was an okay match. Did what it needed to do. Clearly, nobody got pinned here. We got Drew McIntyre and Sheamus get the windfall by disqualification. What were your thoughts of the match?
I mean, you were talking before about how there's a weird issue with McIntyre being a babyface and Sheamus
Yeah,
being a heel. This was our first time in a while seeing Sheamus full on as a babyface. I mean, as far as the whole match went, Sheamus worked babyface, beating up the Miz and Morrison. Got AJ Styles on the outside. As I've said before, I love AJ Styles suddenly having a vested interest in the Miz and John Morrison purely because he wants that title, and he's going to use the Miz as a way to get to it. Yeah, I liked the match. I'm not surprised with the disqualification finish. The Sheamus thing, I mean, yeah, they had Sheamus stay true to McIntyre this week, and so it kind of makes me really wonder what the ultimate payoff is going to be for this. But yeah, after the match, there was one thing that happened that I really wish we could have seen more of because we didn't get the full visual of what happened. But there's a point where AJ Styles is in the ring, talking to Drew McIntyre,
yeah,
and the camera cuts to McIntyre. As it quickly cuts back because the director realizes what they're doing, we see the very end of AJ flipping over the top rope onto Almost's shoulder.
yeah.
I want to see what he did. I'm under the impression that Almost actually grabbed him and pulled him over the top rope.
That doesn't
And then
surprise
we
me.
get this great conclusion where Almost is walking off and AJ's on his shoulder. And AJ looks tiny. AJ Styles the same
Yeah,
size as me, looks tiny next to with this guy. And he's yelling to McIntyre that McIntyre's lucky that Almost got him out of there.
yeah.
Great. Like, AJ's perfect playing this role.
Oh, 100%. I think the only thing I'd say, as you said earlier, with Almas, I'd like it if he was, besides the height and the intimidation factor, I think he needs to be a bit more menacing. Clearly, he has to have some sort of impact in this main event, if that makes sense, when it happens at TLC. But I really like the way, as you said, that Styles is getting rescued by Almas, and it's a fun, entertaining segment. I think they did a good thing. Obviously, there's a tease of the cash in yet again. We're having that a lot. It was an okay end to the show. For me, it didn't. It really kind of lacked a cliffhanger, which we've not really got anything to look forward to for next week in that respect. I'm much more of a fan of when it goes off and you're still wondering kind of what's going to happen. If I was going to rate the show kind of out of 10, I'd say this week was a 5 out of 10 for me. A couple of good parts. I thought it's been kind of a bit backwards from the last 2 weeks. I thought the last 2 weeks have been far better. But for me, I think they tried to put a lot in it, and they're clearly trying to move things forward for TLC. But I think what's holding them back a bit at the moment is the lack of follow up on storylines and just a lot of the rematches. They seem to rematch every single week. And I think I'm getting a bit bored of the whole Miz Drew sort of dynamic continually. I think that for me is just it's getting a bit boring now. What were your thoughts on rating of the show overall?
Man, people are going to think that I'm just following along with you, but I swear before you said it, I was also going to go with a 5. Some good, some bad, nothing spectacular. And historically, WWE's had this issue. Even though they had the TLC pay-per-view in December, WWE has always seemed to fall into this creative lull that they don't get out of until we start our Royal Rumble promotion and stuff like that. And so, yeah, it seems like they're kind of stuck in this limbo to where there's still consequences from Survivor Series. We're setting up some matches, but how important are these matches in the grand picture of professional wrestling or sports entertainment or whatever. And yeah, I mean, until, the new year, it always seems to kind of have that limbo.
Definitely. I think for me, I think that the one thing they kind of lacked this week, I can't believe I'm saying this, was Adam Pearce. I know he was injured the week before, but they really missed that GM figure sort of turning things up. But as I said, it was an okay show. Obviously, next week builds. I'm a big fan of obviously Alexa Bliss and The Fiend and that where that's going. But next week, we definitely need to see that develop. I think really, if they're going to turn The Fiend babyface, next week, Randy has to do something that's going to make people talk. Have you got anything else to add before we go into NXT?
No, man. Yeah, I'm gonna stay tuned, and hopefully they can give us more to watch for and stuff like that. I am really into this AJ Styles Ms. Morrison thing, and I think that we could have some good material there.
Perfect. Okay, let's get into this NXT show. So obviously this NXT show, obviously this was last Wednesday. We open up the show with obviously Ember Moon versus Candice LeRae with Indy Hartwell. This was a very good match. Candice LeRae got the windfall. And then obviously after the match, we then had Toni Storm come out. Toni Storm obviously comes out to back up Ember Moon as you've got sort of Gonzalez and LeRae there and Hartwell there. And then obviously we get Toni Storm doing a full-on heel turn, which I was really a fan of. I'm a massive fan of the surprise element. I really like the heel turn here, and I love that first match. What was your kind of thoughts this whole segment and match for NXT?
Yeah, man. I have never seen Toni Storm as a heel. I'm interested to see what she can do in that role because, I mean, one person who what I was saying about Matt Riddle, one person who I never thought we would see as a heel is Bayley. And now, kind of when you think about it, you can't imagine Bayley not as a heel, like the role she played in that match. So, the same way, I'm interested to see what side of Toni Storm we're going to see. No one saw that coming. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is I do feel a little bad for Ember Moon. I don't think she's lost all credibility, but now in the past couple of weeks, we've seen her lose to Dakota Kai, and now she's lost to Candice LeRae. I think that Ember Moon's going to, we're going to see her in the War Games match on Shotzi Blackheart's team. But still, long-term for Ember Moon as a competitor, how much credibility has she lost?
Definitely. I think the fact that you're clearly getting numbers here, I think it's it's an interesting time to turn somebody to join your team. I think obviously Toni Storm as a heel is something fun. It's something different. I like this whole team, the Raid. They're really building a good team for the people that the fans dislike, which I really like. And I think this is great. It's something different towards the War Games, which is good. We then kind of went into our next match, which was Timothy Thatcher versus Kushida. This was an okay match. It was very technical. I quite enjoyed what they did. Obviously, we got Kushida get the windfall here. For me, I think the end game with this one, this was only really designed to get set up. This whole Timothy Thatcher Tommaso Ciampa match is probably going to happen this Sunday at War Games. What's your thoughts on this match?
Yeah, I thought the match was all right. I've said in the past that Kushida is one guy who I know he has a lot of fans. He's never completely clicked with me. Now, Timothy Thatcher. I've liked what they've been doing with him, kind of have him playing this hard-ass trainer who bullies his students and bullies people in the ring and stuff like that. And, I mean, yeah, it seems like, Tommaso Ciampa is the wrong guy that he picked a fight with, basically. And so we're going to see Thatcher get what's coming to him from, one of the NXT mainstays and a guy who has been a man of reckoning for a lot of people in NXT. Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely what they're setting up.
I've got one complaint that I think it's just a small thing. I wasn't a fan of Thatcher tapping out here. Like, I think the fact is Thatcher's meant to be a submission expert, yet you having him be submitted. I think they should have made a lot more of his first loss by submission. Would you agree, or do you think that's sort of
Yes.
not correct?
Yeah, no, I agree. Because his whole thing for weeks now has been doing these little vignettes where he's training people on how to escape from grappling holds. But Kushida puts him. I mean, yeah, Kushida was clearly the better man, and it's sort of what I was saying about Ember Moon. What does that say about Thatcher? Like, does he lose a level of seriousness that he can be taken by if you solidify the fact that he might not actually know what he claims to know?
Definitely. We then go into this Kevin Owens show. So Kevin Owens obviously was the guest commentator on NXT this week in place of Wade Barrett. And we then had the North American champion Liam Ruff come out. This, in essence, was just basically designed to set up this triple threat match, the North American title versus where obviously Leon Ruff's going to defend his title against Damian Priest Gargano. What was your thoughts of this segment? And are you enjoying Leo Ruff as the North American champion?
So, well, I am because it's kind of a Mikey Whipwreck thing, like back
Yeah.
when he won the tag titles in ECW. But I also wanted to say really quick, Kevin Owens was a very welcome guest on NXT. I feel like I was watching PWG back when Kevin Owens or Kevin Steen was a very common color commentator with PWG. Kevin Owens is good. I mean, he's sort of, I mean, the thing too about what I said about Matt Riddle, Kevin Owens, when he's cutting promos and when he's on commentary, is playing himself. And that's just how he is. And he has a great personality for stuff like that. And I thought too, his personality was really good in this segment. The way that he was like, oh, you know, when you mentioned his heel Leon Ruff, when you mentioned Gargano's name, he's going to come out. And Leon Ruff, I think has played his role well, but I don't think that the long-term plan is to have him with that title or to even do anything with him at all. I think that at NXT, we're going to see it go back to Damian Priest or go to Johnny Gargano. I think that Johnny needs to win the title back to kind of change course. But I've told you before, like the Lana going through the table stuff, WWE has this bad habit of like keeping something going. So there's this Gargano curse and stuff to where they might just keep it going for the sake of having this curse be material they can use in the future.
I've got a couple of points with it. I think the fact that I get the whole feel-good underdog story of Leon Ruff, for me, where I have the trouble with it is this is your North American title. This is your second most important title on the whole brand, yet you've got it being flanced about by like a comedic act. I think this is, you don't get R-Truth with the United States title on Raw. You don't get R-Truth with the Intercontinental title. You know what I mean? I'm all for the comedy and the curse, but for me, I think they chose the wrong person. Leon Ruff, they should have given it to somebody else that has a bit more experience. When you look at it, Leon Ruff was getting destroyed by people like Austin Theory, Drake Maverick on 205 Live, and Tony Nese and people like that. Yet he's now here in this spot, which I get it for comedic. I'm hoping that it'll be done sort of at this pay-per-view. And it's okay. I get the whole feel-good factor, but for me, I think I'm not a fan of when you're one of your most important titles basically just being sort of thrown around in a comedic spot. Do you think he's a good champion, or do you think it was stupid doing that with one of the most important belts they have?
Well, actually, the person I want to talk about now is Damian Priest, because he's certainly lost a lot of edge that he had a couple of months ago. I mean, he's turned from a heel to a babyface, but still, the fact that Damian Priest would happily let a jabroni, and like, I'm not disrespecting Leon Ruff as a person, I'm talking about purely how he's been portrayed on TV. Yeah, he's a jobber. He's always been. So jabroni, and yet Damian Priest is happy to allow him to be the North American champion if it means that Priest gets the better of Johnny Gargano. And it's like, well, shouldn't Priest want the title? I mean, he does want the title, but it's like, I feel like Damian Priest, the guy he was a few months ago, wouldn't have even liked to see Leon Ruff with the title. He wouldn't like to see anyone but himself with the championship.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you're spot on there. We then went into this whole match between Cameron Grimes and Jake Atlas. This was an okay match. It was just basically designed to get sort of Grimes over. Didn't really get much time. Atlas at the moment seems to be booked to be losing every week, which is unfortunate. Grimes obviously won the match. He then had this Dexter Lumis basically come up behind him. We then get William Regal book a strap match basically for the Takeover this Sunday. What's your thoughts of this whole Grimes and Jake Atlas match and what happened after?
So I talked about AJ Styles playing a cowardly heel. We do see that with Cameron Grimes too. I find him entertaining. Dexter Lumis has gotten a mixed reaction over the past few months, but I'm a huge fan of his, actually. I'm not really sure what he's supposed to be. I've kind of said he's a serial killer, but I find the guy pretty entertaining. The only thing is, we've seen them in so many matches. It's pretty much like on Raw, you have Jeff Hardy and Elias. And on NXT, you have Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes. Two feuds that WWE just will not let die. They're just stretching it out for as long as they can. There's, I guess, a level of intrigue over the fact that Cameron Grimes runs from Dexter Lumis and now he has to be strapped to him. But I'm just wondering now, is after this takeover, are we going to see them, you know, at 3 or 4 more takeovers next year having matches with each other? I mean, how long are they stretching this out? Because I thought I forgot what they called it. The match that they did that was done, you know, like the Matt Hardy format. What was the actual title of that
Haunted
match?
House match, basically.
There we go. The Haunted House match. I thought that could have been a good payoff, and then you move Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes onto something else. But no, they've kept it going, and so we're going to get a strap match. I don't think it'll be bad. I don't think the match itself will be bad. I just think that the feud has kind of run its course.
Perfect. We then go into the next segment. We had Rhea Ripley address her future. Clearly, it was a really good promo. The end of the promo was her basically getting attacked and getting beaten down by Team LeRae. Clearly, we obviously saw Io Shirai be pulled out as well and obviously be dumped down. Really good job to build up the heels. Obviously, Rhea Ripley says she's staying on NXT, which was interesting. What was your thoughts of this segment? I thought it was a really good placeholder to build up that whole War Games match. I think it further highlights how dastardly Team LeRae are, including Tony Storm and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. It did really establish Candice LeRae's team, and they've done a great job at that. It also established Rhea Ripley as someone, who we've seen it from a few people like Tommaso Ciampa and Adam Cole, people who over the past few years, the idea is when something doesn't go their way on NXT, it's like, oh, they're going to get called up to the main roster. And these people, including Rhea Ripley, have said, no, like NXT is my home. This is where I'm staying because it's not developmental and I'm not getting called up. This is a third brand. And yeah, I mean, for the here and now, Rhea Ripley she is still NXT. This is cliche. We are NXT. Rhea Ripley is NXT. And that's what I like about it is, yeah, I mean, obviously we're going to see Rhea Ripley on, I guess, is it going to be Shotzi Blackheart's team?
Yeah,
Have
we'll
they
go
officially
into
said
that.
that Shotzi's the captain?
Yeah, we'll go into the teams or the predicted teams sort of when we do the predictions. Looking at it, I thought it was a
Yeah.
good spot. I think the fact you got your women's champion there in Io Shirai, Rhea Ripley's there. I think for me, clearly they're both capable of being on the main roster. I think NXT keeping them at the moment is a great addition for NXT. We then go into one of the most intriguing moments of the show. We're getting that video package of Xia Li and Boa and the Master and the Emperor. So obviously, for anybody who knows, we get them in a car. They look like they've been kidnapped. We then get them sort of at some warehouse. And there's some sort of weird stuff going on with drawings on hands, and then we then get this whole cameo of a woman, almost like the woman from The Ring, the film The Ring almost. Really, really weird and creepy. Obviously, they're both terrified. When we look at it, this is one of the best kind of built angles, I'd say, in WWE at the moment in NXT. They've done a very good job of keeping everything secret. It's not out there in the dirt sheets. And there's intrigue every week. I'm looking forward to seeing this segment, and I've done credit to them. I don't know what the long-term plan is or what the payoff is. I can predict now on the show after Josh gives his predictions. But when they go from this whole thing of Boa trying to get her to win matches and stuff, as I said, how they've changed this basically from that to potentially a female debuting down the line, I think it's clever. What's your thoughts on this angle, and where do you think it's going?
So, yeah, I mean, I said this thing about the Chinese mafia. I'm not
Yeah,
quite sure if that's what it's supposed to be, but a couple of weeks ago, I thought that the old man, was the mob boss, but I think
yeah,
now we're seeing that he's like an enforcer for this mafia, and
yeah.
the actual mob boss is, I think that you said, is it supposed to be Karen Q? Is that right?
We've got two. We've got one
Is
or
that
two.
her
So
name?
it's either going to be Mako Satomura, potentially, or Karen Q, or the long shot. I don't know how this fits with me. Is Mercedes Martinez. She's due back on NXT. So one of them three. But for me, I think the fact you've got Boa being scared of this woman, I don't know if that fits me. I would love to see a stable of mixed people. Maybe this mafia type thing rather than just Karen Q. But the way it's been done is really. Are you looking forward to seeing where it goes next and what they've done so far?
Yeah, I'm interested, but I also think that there's a certain level of unintended comedy to it. I
Yeah,
mean, like the way that Boa and Xia Li, they look like they've gotten no sleep for a
yeah, they
week
do.
straight and stuff like that. And I've said in the past, I do always think it's funny when wrestling matches, which are sporting events or whatever, have these outside the ring consequences that seem to be much bigger to where like somehow Boa and Xia Li's family's life is on the line over
Yeah.
their ability or inability to win wrestling matches.
I think the thing is, if it's just this woman that's revealed, if say it is just Karen Q or something at the end of it, for me, I just don't. For me, I don't see why Bo is so scared with it. There should be a male counterpart as well. I think you need a couple of people maybe you could bring into the stable. But looking forward to seeing what they do. They were making out as if this woman was going to be basically the next Su Yan or somebody that all the women are going to be scared of. So whoever it is, interested to see where the payoff is and where it goes. I'm liking the Lucha Underground style vignettes. It's something different. And looking forward to tonight's NXT to see what they do with that. But definitely, we then kind of go into the next segment where we've got Ever Rise in the Ring. We then basically have a match that doesn't happen. We then have the returning Zach Gibson and James Drake, aka the Grizzled Young Veterans. They turned up for NXT UK. Really, really happy to see them back. I'm a massive fan of Zach Gibson. This guy can talk for England. He's one of the best talkers probably in wrestling today. I think he doesn't get enough kind of praise, and I'm really hoping this could be a good start for them to do stuff. What are your thoughts on the return of the Grizzled Young Veterans?
I was surprised because, with all the stuff going on in the world, you don't usually see people come in internationally to or from a country. So actually, I want to give props to WWE and AEW actually for the past month. We've seen Pete Dunne, Pac, and now Zach Gibson and James Drake. And here's the thing, man. There are no nonstop flights right now from the UK to Orlando or Jacksonville or any of that. So the companies are having to put some effort, and these guys are probably having to stick through a pretty tough plane ride to get here. Definitely not a nonstop flight. They're having to make some connections and all that. But both companies have been able to get clearance, I guess, for work purposes to bring them over. And yeah, I mean, Zach Gibson and James Drake, I've always liked Grizzled Young Veterans. Zach Gibson has been one of my favorite UK performers since they started the whole WWE UK stuff. I think he's great. I think that he's one of the few people who will gladly play a heel and not try to get himself over, if that makes sense. He's a very old school heel.
Call me crazy. I'd much rather see him in the spot with Danny Burch than Orny Loken. I would love it if they would have put him in that spot, really. I think he's got that sort of, he can really get a crowd irate quickly, you know. I just hope he's given the time really to talk. I think it's great to see the stable, or not stable, tag team back on TV. Have you got anything else to add before we go into the next segment?
No, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with the Grizzled Young Veterans. They put them in the tag title picture or whatever.
Definitely. I think it should be fun to see what they do. We then go backstage. We obviously got Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. They're in a car. The most crucial thing in this one is that next door to Indy Hartwell is another Ghostface. So a couple of things with this then.
Yes.
I think it was great to see them sort of follow up the payoff. Clearly at the Halloween Havoc, Johnny Gargano was lifted on someone's shoulders to get the belt. For me, I'm glad they've revealed it's not Indy. A couple of key things with it. I think it's going to be fun. That the early rumor for me is it's probably going to be Austin Theory. I think he fits. I think that's going to be the character. I think the thing that I think lets it down, if they were clever, WWE, what they should have done is a couple of weeks ago when Leon Ruff was told to go into Damian Priest's sort of car, I think it would have been much more clever if you saw Leon Ruff start the engine and then the Scream Face basically attacking from behind. I think they should have done a much better job of just having the Scream Face still being there rather than just randomly bring it off. And I'm guessing that this is going to be interesting. Any predictions on sort of who this is going to be, and what's your thoughts of the segment?
Dude, I can't think of anyone better than Austin Theory, given what they've been doing with him and stuff like that. I will tell you, too, here's my thoughts on this stuff. We actually get some consistency. We were talking about it before. Yep. I guess the only way to sum it up is if only the person who's been writing this Johnny Gargano Ghostface angle was writing Retribution stuff on Raw, we might get some consistency with that, too.
It's clever they followed up.
I mean,
it's just a shame they haven't done it the whole way. Like, you know what I mean? You've got this, and I get it, it's a great tease. For me, I would have saved that tease probably to the pay-per-view, but it's great. It's great sense of mystery. We then kind of go into this main event. The main event obviously is an advantage ladder match between Pete Dunne and Kyle O'Reilly. Fantastic match. They got a lot of time. Interesting part at the end of the match, really. We then get basically somebody run in, and they've obviously got they're masked as well. We don't know who they are. And then obviously that helps basically Team McAfee get the win, really. What were your thoughts on the match and kind of that angle after where somebody runs in?
So I had a feeling that was going to happen. You know, I mean, you've got all the other guys out there anyway. And so, yeah, I mean, by the way, I also, Jim Ross has made jokes about this in the past. The heels always win the coin toss or the advantage in a War Games match. And so I already knew that we were going to see the Team McAfee get the advantage in that match. I already knew that Pete Dunne was going to win. So yeah, I mean, you've got the guys. I love how you had them in like forklifts or scaffolds or whatever watching the match.
I think it's interesting. I think it creates an interesting sense of dynamic. For me, there's a couple of things here. Obviously, McAfee couldn't be at the show. It's Thanksgiving. Obviously, he had more important things to do, so they had to cover that. If WWE were clever, they should have had somebody under the mask of the McAfee. For me, what I would love to see to be controversial is Finn Balor. I think Finn Balor would be great sort of in this spot. But for me, I think obviously when they do reveal, probably this week, I think it's going to be McAfee. The reason why I say it probably isn't going to be Finn Balor, because we're going into a pay-per-view next sort of on Sunday, it isn't really enough time for him to be revealed as part of the stable for me. I think if you're going to do it and you do it with like only 2 days before a pay-per-view, it's not really build. If they are clever and they don't want it to be McAfee, what they'll do on Sunday is they'll have this mystery person interfere and ultimately cost sort of the UE the match, really. What's your thoughts on who do you think the mystery person is going to be? Any prediction on that?
The mask looked very similar to that metal mask that McAfee was wearing when he came in. So that's what I assume it is. Yeah, my thing too is McAfee has proven that he can actually go in the ring. And so they have a pretty good 4-4 dynamic right now. There's not really a need to add anyone else. I mean, yeah, McAfee was good in a one-on-one match with Adam Cole. So in terms of
Yeah,
McAfee being able to carry his weight in a War Games match, I mean, people like Paul Ellering and J.J. Dillon have wrestled in War Games matches. You know, people who don't even have to wrestle that well because it's just a fight. So McAfee will do fine in there. I don't see the need to bring in anyone else. I mean, even Finn Balor. Yeah.
definitely. I think if we're if I was going to give the show a rating, I really enjoyed the show. You created a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of stuff going on. There's stuff to watch next week for me. I think that you're still building angles on further. The Ghostface was a nice surprise. I like the whole thing with Xia Li. I think it's something interesting to see where that's going to go. And now we've got this mystery person in the main event as well. Makes it kind of interesting. The only thing that probably maybe let the show down was they haven't built much for this week. Clearly, we're going to go in. They're going against sort of AEW's biggest Dynamite ever, like tonight, where we're going to have Kenny Omega and John Moxley for the title. I thought it was a good show,
Yeah.
but if I was going to give it a rating out of 10, I'm definitely going to go for a 7. I enjoyed it. What was your thoughts and rating of the show overall?
That's the same one I was going to give it. Again, people are going to think I'm just copying you.
You're not on the payroll. No.
Yeah, I know, right?
Definitely. No, definitely. Okay, cool.
It was decent.
Cool. We're now going to kind of go into this NXT takeover. Let's get into the predictions and of this coming Sunday's War Games. So we'll start with the most important match of all. No, it's not really the most important match of all. We're going to go with this strap match. So we've got the strap match between Dexter Lumis and Cameron Grimes. When I look at it, let's look at the breakdown. So obviously, previous meetings, Cameron Grimes beat Dexter Lumis in previously. He's beat him kind of a couple of times, and he beat him. Actually, no, that's wrong. Actually, let me get it wrong. Sorry, look at my notes. My notes should be right. Apologies. No, so what they've had one match. It was actually a draw, which was the blindfold match. Obviously, before that, Dexter Lumis has lost to Timothy Thatcher. He did beat Cameron Grimes at the Haunted Horror House at Halloween Havoc. When we look at Cameron Grimes has been on a decent run. He's beat Jake Atlas. He's beat Kushida. I don't know how he did that. That's a miracle. And he's also beat Ridge Holland by disqualification. When we look at the winner here, for me, I really hope Dexter Lumis wins it. He's got far more ability to go somewhere with this. I think clearly when you look at it, before he got injured, he was up there with the UE. He was in that whole segment. So I think for me, we're going to hopefully get Dexter Lumis win. What's your thoughts of this match and who's going to win?
See, I'm concerned that because we haven't seen Cameron Grimes get a win over Dexter Lumis, that they're going to try to say that he's due for one. Because I kind of also wonder if this will be the last match we see with these two guys. They might have Cameron Grimes win this one, so they use it as an excuse to where, now we have to see another match between them at Takeover, Royal Rumble, or whatever it is. I do think that Dexter Lumis needs the win more. He needs the momentum more. But I'm concerned that they're going to look at the math work and say, we have to level the playing field by having Grimes win this time.
I think if you're going to get Grimes win, this will be a spot where you need to bring in somebody to help Grimes, like whether you get a helping hand from somewhere, whether that's somebody. I've got this image really of somebody coming in that maybe kind of is quite tall and sort of intimidating, if that makes sense. That's the place really to bring somebody in. But it'll be an interesting match. Not really sort of sure how it's going to go, but looking forward to it. Have you got anything else to add in that match before we go on to the next one?
No, we're good, man.
No, okay, so let's go into the NXT North American title. Obviously, triple threat. We've got the defending champion, Liam Ruff, facing the ex-champion, Johnny Gargano, and then Damian Priest. So when we break this down, obviously, Liam Ruff, superstar overnight. He's won his last 2 matches. He's beaten Johnny Gargano once by pinfall, once by disqualification. He's obviously only had the belt kind of since the beginning part of November, the biggest shock of the year. We then look at his sort of opponents, Damian Priest. Obviously, he's beat Dexter Lumis kind of this year. He's also beat people such as Johnny Gargano before. He's beat Austin Theory, beat Timothy Thatcher. So he was on quite a good run until he lost that belt at Halloween Havoc. We then look at Johnny Gargano. Johnny Gargano obviously has been pretty solid. Obviously won the belt. He's always winning the belt, then kind of losing it. So he obviously wins the belt, and then he kind of unfortunately seems to drop the belt. So looking at this match, if I'm going to predict what's going to happen, for me, I think this is the spot really where you're going to have to get a belt off Liam Ruff. I'd be a massive fan of Johnny Gargano winning. I think this is a spot really where whoever's been helping Johnny Gargano, this is the point where you need to reveal the Scream Killer. What's your prediction? Who's going to win this?
Damn it. It's just like the ratings, man. I'm going to say a lot of what you were just saying. Yeah, my impression the whole time they've done it is that Leon Ruff has been, they brought him in kind of to play a role, but there's nothing long-term planned with it. They just needed someone. They needed a guy with no credibility to win the title, thanks to Damian Priest. And now, I think the belt has to go back to either Damian Priest or Johnny Gargano. And I was going to say the same thing you, man. Yeah, I think this is the match where you have Ghostface come out and help Gargano get it. And then, you know, we've waited long enough. Let's see who's under that hood.
It depends. If they're clever, they could delay it. They could say sort of we'll have Ghostface win, then you delay it to next week on NXT, and then that way you get it further. But I think Gargano really needs to win. If we look at it, he's obviously beat Austin Theory. That was kind of Austin Theory's one of Austin Theory's last matches, which would indicate that Austin loses and he could go to Gargano. How did you beat me? And then that's how he joins. That's how the whole way the Ghostface thing works. But besides beating Austin Theory and Damian Priest once with help. Johnny Gargano hasn't been very good since October. He's been losing, so I think this is a place for him to win. Though, get him to win here. You don't want to do the curse of NXT yet again on the next night. You've done it already. Let's get Gargano to win. Give him at least some run, and I think definitely go towards Gargano and Priest with maybe Ghostface in some sort of element. I don't know where Leon Ruff fits in here. For me, it wouldn't surprise me if he's just sort of an opening act again pretty soon.
Yeah, I do like the element. You know, they talked about the Gargano way.
Yeah.
I like the element of Johnny Gargano actually mentoring someone, you know, kind of under him, kind of teach him the Gargano way. That would be the logical next step.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it'd be interesting to see how they pay it off. But this will be in ring. This will be a great match. I'm looking forward to seeing it. We then kind of go into sort of one of the War Games matches. We've got the women's War Games match, which is obviously Team LeRae. We know the team now. So it's Candice LeRae, Tony Storm, Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez facing Team Blackheart. So we know it's Shotzi Blackheart. We know it's Ember Moon, and we know it's Rhea Ripley. Obviously, they've not officially announced the fourth member yet, but for me, the obvious one has to be Io Shirai. She's not on the card. So looking at this match, this is going to be a great match. You're putting Io Shirai in there. She's obviously hasn't really lost this year, so I think it's going to be good. Interesting element. Really interested to see how Indy Hartwell fits into this match as well. If you're looking for a winner, for me, I think this is a spot really for the baby faces to get revenge because they've been destroyed in the build-up here. And I really think if you're looking for sole survivors or people to survive, I can't see them beating Rhea Ripley and Io Shirai at the expense of the other team, even with Tony Storm's new character. What's your prediction and thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Io Shirai, given the way that they've had her tied with Rhea Ripley, if you're going to have Ripley on Team Blackheart, you need to have Io Shirai on there too. And yeah, that's the thing. It's sort of what I was saying about Ember Moon before. The baby faces have been set up very well to get their comeuppance and win this match. And that seems like the right thing to do. I think that also the way that they've built up Candice LeRae, she's in a position now to where she and her team can handle a loss like that. It won't hurt them significantly. The team losing won't hurt the individual competitors.
Definitely. I think if they're clever, they'll use this match as a platform to create a match for Io Shirai off the back of it. I think they should really do that. I think this has got great potential to be an in-ring. I think it'll be fantastic. But I just don't see them having Io Shirai lose. They've kept this win streak going for so long, her winning by all accounts, even though they've got this new sort of Tony Storm character. I don't think that's enough really for Io to lose here. Have you got anything else to add on that match before we go into the main event?
No, let's talk about that main event, baby.
Okay, so we've got the men's War Games match. Obviously, we've got the Undisputed Era. So Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong and Bobby Fish facing the Kings of NXT, Pat McAfee, Pete Dunne, and the Tag Team Champions, Orny Lorcan and Danny Burch. For me, this has been built absolutely fantastic. They've done right with Kings of NXT, the way they've built these guys up. They've done what they should have done, Retribution. They've just put so much effort into it. We actually really hate these guys. Pat McAfee on the microphone. He really gets the crowd wound up, and I really like the Pete Dunne addition. I think it's really clever. He's made Danny Burch and Orny Lorcan relevant as well, which is great. And I really like it. I really like the way they've been kind of untouched really to this point. Interesting dynamic with this is whether we're going to get a turn somewhere. I get the feeling somewhere along the line we're going to get the heels somewhere or another pull the win off it, and I can see maybe a turn from somebody or maybe somebody coming in. If you are going to do this spot, as I said earlier, with the mystery man come in and unveil, this is the spot to kind of do it. What's your prediction and what's going to happen?
So what we were just saying about the women's match, the way that Kings of NXT have been getting the better of Undisputed Era, it does seem like when you first look at it that, oh, this is being set up to where Undisputed Era finally get their revenge and stuff. Yeah. But I think there's more of a question in this match of what you do if you want Kings of NXT to win. Obviously, a new stable, they look very strong, but do they need a win like this? And if they do win, do you have this victory cause Undisputed Era to break up? Or, sort of what I thought you were referring to just now, does a member of Undisputed Era actually cost them the match? That's the thing.
That's the way to kind of do it. I think if you're going to do it, as I said, the Undisputed Era, for me, they're overdue a breakup. They've obviously done everything they can in NXT. And I think if you want to make Kings of NXT sort of uh, even more legit, they do need that extra member, which is maybe why maybe that would work. And for me, it depends on whether they want to do this. If they want to have this as one match and done, or if they want to get mileage out of this feud and make it last, that's carry on in weeks to come, this is where you need to get sort of, you want to bury Undisputed Era to the point where you don't think they're going to come back. And then obviously you do get them to come back and get that big win in the end. Who do you reckon is going to win if you're going to predict, though? Put a prediction out there.
It's tough. It's tough. Like, I could see them going either way. If I had to put money on it, I think that they're going to have Kings of NXT win somehow. I'm not sure if it's going to be because of a member of Undisputed Era turning on their team. Yeah. It could be, as you talked about, a fifth person coming from the outside to help them or something like that. But I do think that, Undisputed Era have been mainstays for years now. Kings of NXT are brand new. They need a big win. I mean, we just saw Pete Dunne beat Kyle O'Reilly, but they need a big win.
Definitely. I've got one last kind of thing for you. Would you be a fan of maybe somebody like a Finn Balor that's not on the card anywhere coming out and basically doing that big heel turn and then obviously costing Undisputed Era? Would you be a fan of that, him making his impact in this match at all?
I don't know, because then what do? You have, I guess, Adam Cole get revenge on Finn Balor by challenging him for the NXT title. Would that be the setup you go after? I mean, yeah. I could get behind that, because I will tell you, a babyface Adam Cole against a heel Finn Balor, that sounds pretty good, But it would be a interesting explanation, and we know sometimes WWE doesn't give good explanations, but like, why Balor would suddenly do that after what we've seen from him, with this jaw injury and him coming back from that. I don't know. I mean, they would have their work cut out for them in explaining the storyline, but the wrestling match we actually got from it would be worth it.
I can explain it logically. Let me run this for you, Josh. So the way they explain it is Kyle O'Reilly injured Finn Balor. That's the explanation there, if that makes sense. That Kyle O'Reilly injured Finn Balor. He almost cost him having to vacate the title. That's the obvious one to me that I think would work. I don't know. Would you be a fan of that, or is that too obvious?
That could work. Now, the only question would be why Finn Balor has an issue with all of Undisputed Era instead of personally with Kyle O'Reilly. But you could probably get around that. I mean, like, at this point, man, I'm sold, just because I kind of want to see Adam Cole versus Finn Balor with with each guy respectively as the babyface and the heel, because I don't think that's ever been done. I know they've wrestled each other before, but I don't think they've ever done it with Cole as the babyface.
Definitely. I think that'd be a fantastic in-ring match. I've only got one thing that may stop Finn Balor turning heel, that I believe. We are due a return very soon from none other than ex-NXT champion, Karrion Kross. And for me, I can't see them going into a world title feud of Finn Balor as a heel, facing Karrion Kross as a heel. I just don't see that. So for me, I'd like to see Finn Balor turn heel, but I think we're probably not going to get him turn heel, unfortunately. But I'm looking forward to seeing this match. I'm going to put my neck on the line. I'd like to see Kings of NXT win, but I reckon Undisputed Era probably will win it. I can't see them losing it, unfortunately, as much as I want to see them lose. But have you got anything else to add?
The setup, well, the setup with the angles says that Undisputed Era are going to win. That would bring it full circle after what we've seen the Kings of NXT do for them. But as you just said, and as I've said, I do think that Kings of NXT would benefit more from a win.
100%. I think let's look at it, though. Let's look at it logically. Last thing I'll say about the match in the event. Let's look at it logically. If you look at the teams, Kings of NXT, they've got Pete Dunne and they've got the tag team champions. Like, Pat McAfee isn't actually a wrestler, so they're already kind of outnumbered, which is why maybe they need their help in that respect. As much as Pat McAfee's a fantastic worker in ring, he's not the same level of Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong and Bobby Fish. So to me, that's why Kings of NXT are outnumbered to a certain point in ring for an in-ring capacity. Obviously, War Games, anything goes. I get that element goes out, but that's maybe why we will get the Kings of NXT get that type of help from outside. I think to me, it makes no sense to have this person running on last week's NXT and not follow it up. I get that McAfee couldn't be there and you want to hint that he's there. I do get that. But the clever thing to do would be for it to be revealed to somebody, because it further creates controversy and it means this storyline and feud can go on. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up this show?
No, I could buy that. I could buy that. That's good.
Perfect. Okay. So that's it. So this coming week, Sunday, we've had NXT, and we've got NXT tonight as well. But that's about it, Josh. Have you got anything else you want to add tonight before we end our show?
No, man, I'm looking forward to seeing what they do for the go home show for Takeover. You know, this will we'll see if we get Io Shirai, and we'll kind of see. You know, maybe we see Undisputed Era come out on top tonight in some way. So there's more of a question of what's going to happen at Takeover. Because I will tell you, yeah, man, actually watch out for that. Because if they still show Kings of NXT getting the better of Undisputed Era, UE's probably going over at Takeover.
Well
That's the
said.
thing.
If I was booking it, I'd love to see them continue this mystery man angle. I'd love to see them do this whole thing of someone in the mask. If that's the case, we are going to get something big on Sunday, I reckon. That's my prediction. But no, that's about it. I appreciate you coming on again, Josh. We'll have to have you back next week. We'll probably cover the War Games and more again, if that's okay.
You got it, man. Absolutely.
No problem. Thank you, everyone, for checking out the video. Thank you for sticking this on. Sorry about the technical issues. This has been Jonesy Chats Wrestling, joined by Josh Hayes. We'll be back next week. Please leave a comment below if you like the video. Please share the comment, share the video if you like it. Also, give us a thumbs up. And please, thank you for all the recent subscribers to the channel. This has been Jonesy Chats Wrestling. I'll be joined by Josh Hayes. And thank you for watching. Have a good evening. Thank you.